Nothing will ever be the same again. One day in the Hoyo office after releasing Shilinen, the devs thought to themselves, man, our game really isn't balanced very well. Why are all the good characters Pyro and Hydro? What if we buff Pyro and Hydro transformative reactions? You deserve a raise, said Dway. But more seriously, they're actually buffing Electro reactions. They're buffing it just happens that they're related to Pyro and Hydro. So if anyone's not aware, Electro is an element that is essentially centered around these transformative reactions. In the past, comps focused around Electro Charged have been very effective and very good. And since the release of Dendro, they've kind of fallen by the wayside. And Hoyo has kind of realized and decided to do something about it. I'm glad that they're directly buffing these transformatives instead of releasing characters to buff them. I want to mention that right off the bat because I think it's important and I think it's something worth applauding because it sets a precedent this late into the game that they're willing to do this without releasing characters. Good job, Hoyo. I give you a round of applause. Genuinely, that's applaudable. So let's talk about what they're doing. TLDR, every reaction has a base multiplier, because if they didn't have a base multiplier, they would all do the same damage. So let's talk about what those base multipliers are. So originally, Overload was 2, Electro Charge is 1.2, Shatter is 1.5, and Superconduct is 0.5. Burn is 0.25, Hyper Bloom is 3, and Burgeon is also 3. So what they've done is increase these values for the non-Dendro reactions and the non-Swirl reactions. So Superconduct is going from 0.5 to 1.5. Shatter is going from 1.5 to 3. Electro Charge is going from 1.2 to 2. Overload is going from 2 to 2.75. Reminder, Hyper Bloom is 3. The most impactful of these to me is Electro Charged. If you don't know, Electro Charge is the most confusing reaction in the game. But TLDR, each proc of Electro Charged has the potential to hit twice. And the way that you get Electro Charged to do damage as a character's primary damage method is if they're the only Electro character in a team, or if they're an Anemo character in a Hydro-Electro team. So the big thing is that Anemo swirls Hydro and swirls Electro and creates swirled Electro Charged using that Anemo character's EM. And it's just a lot of damage. This is something you'd be familiar with if you've ever played, well, actually, EC, Kazuha, or Sucrose in the past, or Aggravate Kazuha. But yeah, essentially, TLDR, your swirls create Electro Charged. And that is the primary way you get Electro Charged to do damage. The Overload buff is good for a lot of the same reasons, but I think a bit less useful. That being said, I think it's more useful as a background damage addition. So something like Chevreuse teams, while they may not have a focus on overload damage, the overloads that do get triggered doing additional damage is only a good thing and only a buff. Is it the biggest buff in the world? No, but it's a buff. And you know what? We take those. We also need to talk about Superconduct and Shatter. They're still terrible, but Shatter will once again be a funny meme reaction. It's really fallen by the wayside. People gave up trying to do Shatter meme teams. They're back, baby. Let's highlight one in particular. Like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna try to do more Zenless content. More Genshin content is coming. Did you know most of you watching are not currently subscribed? You should subscribe. I've made a tier list for what characters I think are most impacted by these changes or not impacted by these changes. So here we go. So up top, we're going to mention Kazuha and Sucrose for the Electro Charge change. Kuki, Shinobu, and Dori very similarly for the Electro Charge change. Same with Lisa and Sayu. Now, regarding the Shatter change, let's take a moment to introduce one of the contenders for worst 4-star in the game, Kava. Kava is a Claymore character with a gimmick where he will detonate bloom cores sitting on the ground. He does this by sending a command to the bloom cores to now yourself. So effectively, if you love meme teams, you can do Kava Shatter Bloom, and it might actually be decent damage now. You're gonna play Kava, a cryo character, Jing Cho, and either another Dendro character or another cryo character. I can't believe I'm saying, but yeah, this will be a meme team that you will be able to do with Kava, and it will be funny. It won't be good, but it will be funny. You can also potentially use an Electro character because Superconduct increases the damage of Shatter. Yup. Oh boy, Shatter Bloom Kava. I can't wait to see it. I hope someone plays it. I will never build it myself, and I will probably never play it myself. But you know what? God bless. Let's quickly brush on Chevreuse. So there are some Pyro characters that go into Chevreuse teams that don't really have anything better to build than EM. The obvious standouts are Toma and Dehya. Dia. Those are the obvious standouts for characters you would build EM on in a Chevreuse team because it's just the easiest way for them to do damage. The other character that you might do that with is Xiangling. I think it's a lot more questionable, but you can certainly do it. Xiangling is an EM Ascension character, so she will always be kind of benefiting from this in the background in a Chevreuse team. Specifically a Chevreuse team with an Electro Outfielder, but whatever, you probably understood that. This is in context of Chlorine and Raiden. You can use Katane. Yes, you can use Katane. I don't think it's actually better, but you can certainly do it. And it's certainly comparable, and it's certainly cheaper artifact-wise. So, yeah, it's funny, it's cool. It is a sizable... Not a sizable increase for Xiangling, but Xiangling certainly benefits from it. Xiangling also benefits from this for Overvape, and so does someone like Hu Tao. If you wanted to do your Electro Hydro teams, examples of this are with Raiden or Fischl, and those teams will also be getting not the biggest buff because they're mostly focused on talent damage, but they're getting something. And like I was saying, something is always better than nothing. We take those. This is also going to potentially cause a resurgence in some of the Hydro characters that have fallen by the wayside, like Kokomi and Ayato and Sijuin. I can't say this with a straight face. I can't say Ayato is going to be better with a straight face. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can say it about Kokomi. But yeah, relative gains for Ayato will be quite high, technically. I also want to actually talk about Chlorand. Chlorand Electro Charge teams should be a lot more competitive with Overload and Aggravate teams. I don't think they'll be quite as good on paper, but they'll certainly be a lot more competitive. So a team like Farina/Yelan, Chlorand, Fischl/Orin with Kazuha. It's going to get a sizable increase. It'll also be getting a sizable increase from Ororun. He's an off-field Electro sub-DPS, or off-field Electro DPS character, whose best in slot set will be Scroll, and he can only proc Scroll with Electro Charge, or when Electro Charge is triggered, essentially. Well, look out. He might be really good for Chlorand teams. He might be really good for like Ayato teams. Another Electro character is Yaimiko, very similar stuff to Fischl, very similar to Chlorand, except a bit less damage. It'll be nice for Xingqiu, because Xingqiu teams have kind of transitioned into being largely focused on transformative reactions, because that's where he's a bit closer in competition to the more contemporary alternatives that are better. That's where Xingqiu is most competitive, and that's where his new niche is. So he's definitely going to be benefiting from this. Some characters that don't really care about this are, ironically, Superconduct teams. Fremenet's getting something. Eula's also technically getting something, so it's not nothing. But it's also not moving the needle for these characters, and it's not doing anything. I think Fizz needs a new DPS, and I think they're getting ready for one, because these characters just aren't it, man. I can't believe the best physical DPS in Genshin is Zhongli. EC Neuvillette with someone like Orin, Lisa, or Kuki Shinobu will be getting a buff. Shilinen has kind of released and pushed this a bit out of the way, but something is better than nothing. It's really similar to Scroll Kachina. Characters that this does not buff, it's actually really simple. This does not buff Geo characters at all. This does not buff Cryo characters at all who do talent damage, or Cryo characters period, honestly. This does not buff Tartaglia. This does not buff Animo characters who do talent damage like Wanderer or Xiao. This does not buff Dendro characters. You could try to make an argument that this buffs some Hyperbloom teams, and it can. It also doesn't really do anything. And it definitely does not buff Linny. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I think these changes are really positive. You could argue that they're not far enough. I think the fact that they did it at all is worth applauding, and that means that they could do it again in the future. I have no problem with it being debatably not far enough. I think it's fine. Hyperbloom is in a place where people are very comfortable with it. It may not be incredible or knocking people's stocks off, but people are still very comfortable with it. So bringing up other transformatives to be theoretically very similar in damage is good. I really have no complaint about it. It also gives them room to continue to develop transformative teams without them being so behind in damage.